We'll move on to the Lions game. Seems as we were just sort of talking about them. And the Detroit Lions beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-20. Free Sky, I'll stick back with you. I am like in full Lions mode here. I love this team, man. I mean, since Dan Campbell's taken over, this team has just got like a ruthlessness to them and a never say die attitude, hasn't it? What a pleasure they are to watch.
Yeah, I love them too. And I know I picked the Bucks earlier in the week, but in the video that I did for us, I said by the time the end of the week rolled round, I would see sense and go with the Lions, because they are that good, right? They've got the 1-2 punch with Gibbs and Montgomery. Goff is, I mean, I've looked at his stats, 52 of 70 so far over those 2 games, 564 yards and 3 touchdowns with no picks in 2 playoff games is phenomenal. I just think the only worry for me is their defense seems to be relying on Aiden Hutchinson. And if the Niners can click, it's almost going to have to be a one-man wrecking ball. Because I think with the way that the Packers were playing, I would say their defense on current form is probably even arguably better as a collective than the Lions. It's just that Lions have got that superstar player. But obviously they can be confident. And I think one thing that not enough people are talking about is we all know Jared Goff was a Ram and he's played on the road against the Niners before. I don't think he's going to be phased compared to if it was the Bucks. I think we'd all be saying Niners blowout, but they could be confident. And like you said, Freddie, it's great to see all these Dan Campbell speeches in the locker room because he's really built that winning culture.
And you said, Johnny, that they were, great running on the day. I mean, they rushed for 114 yards combined. Tampa Bay did rush for 89 yards, though. Do you think that's what's going to be pivotal? Excuse me, sorry, let me start again. Do you think that was pivotal in this game against the Bucks? Because it felt like the Bucks defense didn't turn up in certain scenarios, I thought.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think not just the rush defense. I mean, 2 superstars have been doing it, throughout the year. It's difficult for any team to stop them. But, there were a few opportunities, recalling the Jamal Dean, obviously, the pass deflection. But if he had intercepted that ball very early on to stop, I think the Lions scoring the first points of the game. I don't know. There were just a couple of missed opportunities, or a bit sloppiness from the Bucks D. A couple of PI calls, and I went against them. And yeah, I feel that it was it was a slow start to the game, but the Lions were able to just take control, I think, in the second half. And, when Baker Mayfield, tried to make it a shootout, it inevitably went a bit pear-shaped for him. But I thought he had a good game, regardless. I can't remember his stat line, but, he threw for well over 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So, yeah, I think the Bucks have made a good account for themselves in what was a year a lot of people doubted on them. They've still got, some really, really good players. I mentioned Dean, Winfield as well. If they can keep hold of him, this free agency, even Devin White, who we were talking at the start of the year as a player who, obviously a lot of attention, big name, but wasn't necessarily a player that many thought was doing too much and was a trade candidate. I thought the last couple of weeks he's stepped up a bit. They're going to be losing Levante David. Hopefully he can fill a bit more of the void. But yeah, I think the Lions were, with the crowd atmosphere, the storyline, it was almost inevitable. I think that victory, and it just proved too much for Baker.
It's very well documented, but I'm not exactly a Baker fan, Adam. But I do have to admit he did play very well in this game. His stat line was actually 26 for 41, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. But the last pick was the second pick was like the last play of the game. So and they weren't going to, even if they'd gone down the field and win it, I don't think they would have won it. But how much does it help him when you have someone like Mike Evans, 8 receptions, 147 yards and a touchdown? We actually we all texting, weren't we, during this game? And we were saying, how has Mike Evans just been forgotten about yet again this year? Because it feels like he is a forgotten player on this team constantly.
Yeah, I think Evans has kind of made Baker look a little bit better than maybe what he is, to be brutally honest. I think that Evans is
Sky's eye roll is just all-time classic.
He's had over 1,000 yards now, 10 seasons in a row. Is it? I think that's the thing with Evans. He's been very good again this season. Especially after last season where he did struggle a little bit, but he still managed to get over 1,000 yards. I think that Evans has probably helped out. I think that the Bucs' biggest problem was that was pretty much all there was. I mean, it was pretty much just Evans and Baker doing what he could, and Rashad White came in and ran the ball well, but you need more than that. Like you need more than two guys to help you out. So I kind of, in a way, I feel a little bit sorry for Baker in the fact that he just didn't have the weapons, I would argue, to really be able to push on and win games like this. But I think they've done very well, and the Bucs would be, it would make sense for them to keep him there. It would be a strange thing to move away from him, given that he's got into the playoffs with them. But I don't ever see him winning anything with him. But it's like at least you're a playoff team, so it's better than 18 other teams in the league.
Very quickly, I'll let Sky rebuttal on that because he's bursting with energy to defend his boy Baker.
Do you know what? Actually, one thing I would say about this Baker Mayfield thing with how great I think he's played this season is, in any sport, you play harder when you're in a contract year and have a point to prove, right? And he's done that this year. I only pulled the face when Adam said it, because against the Eagles, we saw the likes of David Moore and Trey Palmer step up, and Godwin had the touchdown. Evans was actually quite quiet in that game. Again, but obviously this week he was phenomenal, and I completely agree that he was.
We've moved on though from that game. So,
but you made it sound like he only built. I mean, Cade Otton was probably the main guy in both games. I mean, he's come out.
I was pretty shocked that no one's mentioned his name yet.
Yeah,
I thought Cade Otton was
because you don't remember him, do you?
Yeah. But he is a promising up and coming tight end. He's very young, and he will be, if he can keep developing in his game, he's going to be really good. And we'll be interested to see what happens with Mike Evans.